The craft of animation requires us to look at our drawings a little bit more analytically and ensure that what we are creating is easily read or communicated to that of our audience. The principle of exaggeration is a core principle that guides the creation of our drawings so that our audience can see and understand these movements at a very quick frame rate. If you take a step back and think about the challenge of animation, we have but 1/24th of a second to communicate a movement, an idea, an emotional moment between two characters, a little bit of storytelling. That's not a lot of time. So we need to ensure that our audience sees, comprehends, and understands these moments so that they can truly comprehend the overall story and movement that we're crafting. The principle of exaggeration allows us to be a little bit larger inside of our entire animation system and what we're drawing. Because by making these animations bigger, by making these drawings bigger and the poses bigger than they normally would be, we're allowing our audience to see them a little bit more clearly. Subtlety in animation does not necessarily play. It's actually really difficult to craft an animation where subtle movements are easily communicated to our audience. Again, we're working in a timeline-based environment, so we have 1/24th of a second to communicate a small little micro movement into our audience. To ensure that they see them, we exaggerate them. We make them bigger than life. We bend reality to grab our audience's attention and ensure that they understand how our character is transitioning from one pose into another. Now here are a couple of really great examples, and this first one is of course a baseball throw. In a normal baseball throw, you're not necessarily going to see these extreme movements. The movements itself are pretty kinetic as we throw the ball, but in the art of animation, we intentionally make these poses stretched out, bigger, exaggerated to drive home and communicate to our audience the flexibility and the energy and the sense of weight that this character is using to propel this ball forward. We don't necessarily see this in real life. It's a caricature of these movements. The principle of exaggeration allows us to bend reality and find that inner trait and bring it to the surface. Another great example is this little slingshot animation. It grabs your attention by making what our audience is expecting to see a little bit larger than it actually is. By making the poses stretched out, by making it an extreme movement, not a subtle one, we start to communicate to our audience what the movement is. And they're able to consume and see all the mechanical parts that creates this little slingshot throw inside of our cool animation. Here's another great example. This is a super cartoony one, and the world of cartoon animation takes exaggeration to the highest level. In here, we truly can bend reality. However, we need to provide our audience with a little bit of a realistic believability, kind of cue in here, if you will, so that they have some sort of foundation to stand on. In the world of cartoon animation, we of course are free to bend reality. If you look carefully at this animation here, the exaggerated pose of our little duck moving his leg back in anticipation of the run is something that we wouldn't naturally see in the real world. I mean, no one puts their leg up above their head to start a run, but in the world of cartoon animation, this exaggerated pose instantly communicates character. It communicates the flexibility and the weight of this character inside of a three-dimensional pose. We can also exaggerate the movements themselves. Of course, here in the cartoon animation world, the exaggerated movement is the little swirling pile of feathers at the end. You're not going to see that in the real world. No duck in the real world is A, going to run like this, and then B, runs so fast that it creates a poof of feathers at the end. Not so in the world of animation. We can bend the rules. We can recreate our sense of realism by bending the universe of our drawings to produce a caricature of these movements. Exaggeration frees us up and allows us to break all the bones in our characters, to make our movements bigger than they actually would be so that we grab our audience's attention and demand that they watch our movements and have fun with us as we tell them a small, simple story. So we're free to break reality. We're not here to recreate reality. We want our animations to include the smallest inclination, if you will, of reality. We want our audience to come into our movements expecting to see something that they would here in the natural world, but then we're going to provide them something that's exaggerated, bigger, and more emotional, so that they in turn can also have an emotional experience with the animations that we create. This little bubble is such a great example of how we want to exaggerate the movements. In reality, the bubble is not going to wobble and bend as much as it is here, but in our animations, we need to have it wobble and bend so that our audience understands very quickly that this is a flexible, organic object that's being influenced by the air and by the ground and other forces in our animation to make it pop inside of our scene. The principle of animation allows us to make our world bigger than it actually is. By exaggerating the drawings, we distill singular moments into a true emotional storytelling moment, and it's a whole lot of fun. We want to exaggerate. Like I said, we're not here to recreate reality. We want to use that as the foundation and build on top of it. And the principle of exaggeration allows us to do that.